145 years, and this murder case has never been officially closed. There's a grave that might be empty, a fight over bones, DNA, and cherished dollars worth millions. The corpse of Billy the Kid, the gunslinger who became legend during the Lincoln County War, or whoever's buried under that caged headstone in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, has sparked lawsuits, tombstone heists, a gubernatorial pardon debate, and a financial war between small towns desperate to claim the most famous outlaw in American history. And the only way to know for certain would be to compare DNA with Billy's mother, Catherine Antrim, buried in Silver City, New Mexico. And it's a test that's been blocked for over 2 decades. Hey folks, I'm Mr. V, and welcome back to The Hidden Lens. Today we're talking about a dead man who just won't stay buried, or at least not in any way that anyone can agree on. Start with what we know for certain. On the night of July the 14th, 1881, just after midnight, Sheriff Pat Garrett sat in a darkened bedroom of the rancher Pete Maxwell at Fort Sumner, New Mexico. A young man walked in. The room was pitch black. The figure didn't recognize Garrett and backed towards the wall, whispering in Spanish, "¿Quién? ¿Quién? Who is it?" Garrett recognized that voice, drew his revolver, and fired twice. The first bullet caught the young man in the chest, just above the heart. The second one missed. And just like that, Billy the Kid was dead. Or was he? There's no autopsy, no death photo, which generally is unusual because in the 1880s, photographing the dead outlaws was standard practice. Jesse James got one, John Wesley Harding got one, so did plenty of lesser-known bandits. The most wanted fugitive in American Southwest, though, nothing. The body went to the ground before the sunrise the next morning. A coroner's jury viewed the corpse and certified it was Billy the Kid, based largely on testimony from Garrett and Pete Maxwell. One of Garrett's own deputies, John Poe, immediately asked whether Garrett had shot the wrong man. Garrett brushed it off, saying that he had made no blunder. He knew the kid's voice too well to be mistaken. Years later, his other deputy, James McKinney, recanted entirely, claiming Garrett had killed someone else. Residents of Fort Sumner disputed the death almost from the moment it happened. Now, if the story ended there, you'd have a mildly suspicious frontier shooting and not much else. But then nature intervened. Floods hit the Fort Sumner Cemetery in 1889 and again in 1904, washing away headstones, scattering grave markers, and, depending on who you ask, possibly scattering the remains along with them. Billy's original wooden markers were stolen or destroyed. By the 20th century, nobody could say with absolute certainty where the kid's bones actually were. A new tombstone went up in 1931 and another one in 1940, and both became targets. The headstone was stolen for the first time in 1950. It took 26 years to recover. It's found in Texas, of all places. Then in February 1981, a truck driver who went by the CB handle, Billy the Kid, pried it loose with a crowbar and drove it to California. He got caught, the stone came back, and this time authorities weren't messing around. They shackled the tombstone in iron and locked the entire cemetery plot inside a cage. That cage is still there today, and if you visit, you'll notice the headstone is chipped and worn because for years tourists broke off pieces of it as souvenirs. Fort Sumner eventually made lemonade out of all this chaos, creating the Billy the Kid Tombstone Race, an annual event where contestants run while carrying an 80-pound replica of a headstone mimicking the thieves. That's a hell of a run, ain't it? But the real fight isn't about a chunk of granite. It's about what's underneath it, or what isn't underneath it. To understand why any of this matters, you need to have a little context. Billy the Kid built his reputation during the Lincoln County War. a brutal cattle-bearing conflict in Lincoln, New Mexico that pitted the mercantile empire of Lawrence Murphy against the faction-backing rancher John Tunstall and cattle baron John Chisholm. You know the guy. John Wayne played him. Chisholm. Tunstall's murder in 1878 is what drew Billy in. The regulators, Billy's posse operating as a kind of a vigilante response force, rode in retaliation. By the time it was over, the Lincoln County War had consumed lawyers, lawmen, and politicians alike, including the shadowy network of corrupt officials known as the Santa Fe Ring, which many historians believe is exactly why Governor Lew Wallace promised pardon for Billy the Kid, but that pardon never materialized. In June 2003, the case was officially reopened. And this isn't legend, this is an official homicide investigation. Assigned case number 3613601 by Lincoln County Sheriff Tom Sullivan, former Captain Mayor Steve Setterwall, and Debaca County Sheriff Gary Graves. Their plan was straightforward: exhume the Fort Sumner grave, exhume Billy's mother, Catherine Antrim, buried in Silver City. Compare the DNA, the maternal lineage marker passed unchanged from mother to child. If it matches, it's over. Billy the Kid is exactly where everyone says he is. Simple, right? New Mexico didn't see it that way. Courts blocked this in September of 2004. The reasons were a mix of preservation concerns, uncertainty about the grave's exact location, and pressure from groups like Billy the Kid Historic Preservation Society. Their representative, Trish Saunders, put it plainly: "We really hate the idea of dragging a backhoe through a historic old pioneer cemetery just to find old bones and perform DNA testing for no real purpose other than a brief blip of publicity." But there's another reason the state resists, and Sheriff Graves knew it. This is a very, very hot issue in which New Mexico is losing a lot of tax dollars, tourism income, he says. Fort Sumner depends on Billy the Kid tourism. So does Hicko, Texas, which runs its own Billy the Kid Museum around the claim that Billy survived and lived out his days there under the name of Brushy Bill Roberts. And that brings us to the strangest chapter of this entire saga. In 1948, a 90-year-old man from Hiccup walked into a lawyer's office and announced he was Billy the Kid. Ollie Brushy Bill Roberts claimed Garrett had killed someone else that night and he had escaped. Living under an assumed name for nearly 7 decades, his attorney asked for proof. Billy stripped off his shirt, revealing 26 bullet holes and knife scars on his body, several matching the known wound locations of Billy the Kid. Then he demonstrated a trick that the real Billy was famous for: a double-jointed move that let him shrink his hand smaller than his wrist and slip right out of handcuffs. 4 men who had personally known Billy the Kid, Jim McDaniels, Sergio Gallegos, Martel Abel, and Jose Montello, signed sworn affidavits, stated they believed Brushy Bill was the genuine article. He traveled to Santa Fe to petition Governor Thomas Mabry for a pardon that Lew Wallace had promised back in 1879. The governor refused a hearing. On December the 27th, 1950, Brushy Bill Roberts died of a heart attack. His story faded until 1990 when the movie, yours and my favorite, Young Gun 2, brought him back as a narrator of the whole Billy the Kid saga. There's another claimant, a man named John Miller from Arizona, who died in 1937. His remains were actually exhumed in May of 2005, but the DNA results were useless, degraded beyond recovery, according to the Washington Post. Meanwhile, the money keeps piling up around this mystery. In 2011, the only photograph of Billy the Kid sold at auction for $2.3 million to a Florida billionaire, William Koch. A second disputed photo found by a man named Randy Gallagher, who paid $2 for it at a junk shop, was valued at $5 million. Just this past April, two newly discovered photographs claiming to show Billy as a child went to auction in South Jersey. A single confirmed image of this man is worth more than most people's homes. By the way, I think I may have one. I think I have an image too. On the last day of 2010, Governor Bill Richardson announced he would not pardon Billy the Kid, citing lack of conclusiveness and historical ambiguity as to why Governor Wallace reneged on his pardon. Attorney Randy McGinn responded simply, "A promise is a promise and should be enforced." Come on now, have you not watched Bambi, where if you ain't got nothing good to say, don't say anything at all? Listen to Randy McGinn. So here we sit in 2026, 145 years after that dark night in Pete Maxwell's bedroom. A grave behind iron bars that might be empty. DNA tests that could settle everything, but no one in power will authorize. Towns whose economies rise and fall on the answer, and a dead outlaw, wherever he actually is, worth more than he ever was when he was breathing. If the grave holds Billy the Kid, one test ends the debate forever. If it doesn't, American frontier history needs a serious rewrite. Either way, someone's got a lot to lose, and that is exactly why nobody's in a hurry to find out. If you enjoyed this one, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.